First up today on AGetc, we're joined by representatives from Kansas Corn and U.S. Grains Council talking about their recent trade groups from the Philippines and India. Learn how these groups work together to promote ethanol in these developing countries. Next, Dave Kerr and Brad Rayl from Kansas Ethanol talk about what they hope the trade team takes back to their governments about the potential relationship with both their ethanol and dry distillers pellets they produce right here in Kansas. And we end with an understanding of the difference between wet and dry meat. Closed captioning brought to you by Ag Promo Source. Together we grow. Learn more at agpromosource.com. This segment brought to you by Kansas Regenerative Medicine. Your stem cells, your health, your life.
So Kansas Corn has had a very long relationship with the U.S. Grains Council, close to our entire 40 years. When we look around the world at uses of corn in all forms, us supporting and partnering with U.S. Grains Council, whether we are doing the exporting, whether the exporting is coming from Kansas directly, or whether it's from another state, it all goes to the phrase of a rising tide lifts all boats. We need market demand for our farmers who are producing corn very, very efficiently and very, very plentifully. In Kansas, we are blessed that we have a very substantial livestock market for our corn and the ethanol plant market for our corn. But just as we've learned through the years in producing our grains, we need to go and market to those parts of the world that especially have the growing middle class, who are either going to improve their diets as their incomes improve, and then subsequently they're going to be interested in vehicles and the mobility that we experience with cars. 95% of the people in the world do not live within the United States, certainly don't live within the borders of Kansas, and our products that we want to market to them as customers, we have to use trade and have access through trade markets to successfully sell our product and grow our markets. So just like what we do on behalf of Kansas farmers, of doing things that is difficult for them to do by themselves, us partnering with other states, commodity organizations, and going through U.S. Grains Council is leveraging our funds to be more effective in developing markets. If we all were doing the same thing, we would not be being efficient with the producer's dollar. One of the things I'm really excited about with these especially India and the Philippines, is they already are using ethanol to some extent, and they're learning and desiring to use more. And they have the capacity to produce some of what they need, but not all of what they need. And if we can show that we are a reliable, affordable partner in supplying them ethanol, they may be able to grow and expand by importing product from us, the United States, while they grow their own market. And Bangladesh is just starting, and the market development in countries that are just starting, we've seen that explode over the last 2 years around the world. So I hope that they're able to take the lessons we've learned around working with our automakers, with our retailers, with the supply chain, and with our policy makers in terms of questions that we have had to answer and research that we've had to do to show this is an effective, efficient fuel. We can help them with those studies, share those studies. They don't have to spend dollars on it, but they can then take it to those policymakers and to the stakeholders in the business chain and be much quicker than we were in bringing these products to market.
Watch Ag AM in Kansas online at agaminkansas.com.
Ag Promo Source is a unique group of marketing specialists with one mission: help your ag business grow. Each affiliate has their own area of expertise, and they work together to bring you advice, products, and services. To get started, visit agpromosource.com. Ag Promo Source. Together we grow.
Sure Crop Fertilizers was started by my father, Don Sherman, and my mother, Shirley Sherman. Family business that started in the 80s. We predominantly focus on plant nutrients and what we can do to give growers better responses with the fertilizer dollars that they do, and what we can do to make those things work better for the grower. We're based out of Seneca, Kansas. We work with growers in their soil analysis to figure out what they need, and then we can put those in a blend that gives them the best results, and so that we can deliver that direct to their farm so that they have those nutrients where they need them, when they need them, and so that they can apply them in a manner that's very efficient to them and works well on their planting systems and what they're doing. Sure Crop Fertilizers has been around for a long time. We always say we're big enough to take care of everything you need, but yet we're small enough to do it quickly. You can get a hold of us at 1-800-635-4743. Our website is surecropfertilizers.com, and you can always email me at Corey@surecropfertilizers.com, and with any questions you have, we'll be glad to answer it and work with you.
Hi, I'm Kim Mandarin with Hardy Insurance. I'm here to help you with all of your farm and ranch needs. When it comes to protecting your operation and your family, you need a name you can trust at a price you can afford. Call me today or visit hardyaviationins.com.
This segment brought to you by Kansas Wheat. Learn more at rediscoverwheat.org.
In countries like India, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, they have not yet moved on to E10. Okay, there are few places where the blend is mandated but not implemented. And that's the biggest hurdle. It is as ethanol, put in ethanol as and when it is available. And it is not available across the country 365 days a year. And that's the biggest bottleneck at this point of time. It was important to look at the complete value chain, the production of corn, how it moves into the value, to the ethanol plant, moves on to the production system and the delivery point. At the same time, the food versus fuel, now it is food and fuel. That debate, I think, has been rested. You have a product that goes in for my fuel, there's a product that goes in for feeding the animals to get the animal protein, and there is carbon dioxide that goes in to make my meat or my beverage cold. So it's a way forward for everything. Nothing is lost here. I think networking with people from Philippines, they have already implemented an E10 policy where the domestic and imported ethanol works together. US ethanol that goes into Philippines does not move away from the domestic. It complements the availability of the bigger chunk of the total ethanol that comes in, and it gives a choice to the consumer, and it makes sure that the oil companies also make money. So it's a win-win situation for everyone in the value chain. Each country is different, so we can't just copy and paste. It's more of adaptation, adoption of the technologies that have been used in the US or any other developed nation that can go into a developing country. The valuation of octane was a very important lesson to learn for this group, I think, and how it gets translated into the savings that could be pocketed by the company and shared with the consumers. As I said, each country is different. Like in US, you have companies that are privately owned stations. In India, we don't have it. The oil marketing companies are government owned. So that's a different, we'll have to devise a different way of moving ethanol towards the consumers through an oil marketing company rather than moving it through a private sector initiative. And that is a missing link. We know very well in India that the octane is being given free of cost. But now, if there is an implementation of an E10 blend across the country, the oil marketing companies will save a lot of money, and part of that money could certainly be passed on to the consumers. We look at the current crude price at $80 per barrel. That's an expensive crude. And if in any way we can give a cheaper octane into a gasoline, it will be a win situation for the consumers at large.
KFRM is one of the largest farm radio stations in the nation, dedicated to informing and entertaining rural listeners from northern Oklahoma to southwestern Nebraska. You can catch KFRM in many ways, of course, 550 on the AM dial, streaming at kfrm.com, or on your smartphone by going to the TuneIn Radio app, or on Ag AM in Kansas on Tuesdays and Facebook every day of the week. KFRM, tune us in. You'll be glad you did.
Next time you see a beautiful field of corn, reach out and thank the farmers who work tirelessly to raise corn for livestock feed, renewable fuels, and exports to feed a growing world population. The farmers on the Kansas Corn Commission work for Kansas Corn with grower-funded checkoff dollars that support foreign and domestic market development, research, promotion, and education to expand opportunities for Kansas farmers. To learn more, visit kscorn.com.
This segment brought to you by SureCrop, liquid crop nutrition delivered right to your farm.
Well, I was one of the founders of Kansas Ethanol back as far as raising the money and doing all the other things that are required to get a plant into operation. And I'm now chairman of the board and have been throughout the time that we've been in operation. There is probably more ethanol than we can absorb right now at using 10% ethanol in our fuel supply. And so exports become really important. And so we're favorable towards making more people from other countries aware of the advantages of ethanol as an oxygenator within our fuel supply. Not only from our standpoint, but from the environmental standpoint as well. This is just an excellent additive to gasoline and reduces the carbon that we're putting into the air and other pollutants by substantial amounts, and so we want to play our part in helping make that happen. I think farmers have become pretty aware that a large fraction of the nation's corn, including locally, flows through an ethanol plant. What's lost on some of the critics of ethanol is that that's just the first step, and that our only product isn't ethanol. We have multiple products at this plant. We not only have the distillers grains, which because we're a plant that mostly sells wet distillers grains, that ends up in the many feedlots in the area. So we're feeding the distillers grains to the self-same cattle that would have been eating the corn if we weren't here making ethanol out of the starch. And then we have oil that either goes to biodiesel or it goes into pet food. And we actually make some of our dried distillers into range cubes for cattle during the season when they're out on the pastures and things. And we also even sell a little bit of our CO2 to companies that need flash freezing for their meat products. And so even our CO2 goes into as another product. So we're making a lot of things out of that little corn kernel, and we're proud of the fact that we get better and better and more efficient at doing that. Well, I guess there would be multiple things that we would hope they would come away with. They visited farms, so they, I think, recognize the efficiency with which an American farm now operates. And it is impressive. There's not much more efficient entity than a family farm because of the way that the labor of the owner figures into that. So right from the start, we are an efficient operation, and I think that's the case with our plant as well. We're taking that corn in, and as we've already said, making a lot of things out of it, including a product that we think they would like to have, which would be, well, actually the two products that they would be interested in, both the ethanol itself and dried distillers grains are also easily shipped because they have a long shelf life that can be utilized in other countries to fatten their animals as well.
Summer is busy at Tarwater Farm and Home. We have just about everything you'll need for your summer projects, and we're consistently competitively priced. Tarwaters can help make your grass and garden grow, and we have a huge variety of equipment to cut it. If you have a farm, Tarwaters has the products and equipment to keep it going strong. And our expanded parking lot will make it even more convenient to shop. So come see us at Tarwater Farm and Home in Topeka.
Fort Wallace was the fightingest fort in the West. Fossils, Indians, soldiers, scouts, wagons, trails, pioneers, stories. Discover the story of Fort Wallace and the people who served here, the people who fought here, the people who settled here. Wallace County, where the past is present.
Valley Vet Supply is devoted to providing information and professional quality products at reasonable prices.
Valley Vet Supply.
This segment brought to you by Kansas Corn. Learn more at kscorn.com.
If you look at the United States as a business, which I do, I mean, that's a more macro approach. If you can produce something more than you need for yourself, and you can export that item, it creates jobs, it creates opportunities here for the United States. So we can build our infrastructure and things like that. So foreign trade is huge for any industry, but particularly for the agriculture industry. And as you know, whether it be corn, soybeans, cattle, all the things that we can produce, we're lucky in the United States that we have an abundance of supply. But when that happens, we penalize those that technologically and because of our own entrepreneurial spirit, pretty soon then our prices are too low because we can oversupply. So trade is huge to the United States, and then we need to continue to foster those relationships so that we can keep more growth here in the United States. We have a lot of interest in trade, both on the ethanol side, and then we're kind of a unique plant in the fact that we have a pellet mill that we can take 100% distillers and make that into a pelletized product. And that's kind of a difficult, there's a lot of pellet mills, but when you take distillers that have so much oil in it, you cannot, a typical pellet mill will not pelletize that. So we have to extrude it like the plastic industry does. So we want to take that product and make it into range cattle. And as you know, in the U.S., range cattle are on the range and backgrounders before summer grass. So during the wintertime, we sell a lot of product. Where we're really interested in trade is during those times when the U.S. doesn't use that product, which is in the summer months. So we are trying to look for foreign trade for those 3 or 4 months so that the plant could continue to run year-round. I think to be good trade partners, we need to not necessarily give them our technology. I don't think we want to do that because now we get into an advantage maybe that we might have. At the same time, if they've, particularly like in India where they don't use a lot of ethanol, if they can take a look at the American model and say, the air's clean, it's a less expensive product than oil, and we can blend that with our fuels, then that should foster to where they need it, to where they maybe cannot produce enough that it gives us an export opportunity. I want them to walk away from here knowing that if we say something, we mean it. We're great trade partners. We'll fulfill contracts, and we have a product that they can feel like that they can depend on. To me, where we fit is in make our foreign dependence on oil just a little bit less. But also, I think it's good for the consumer because, quite frankly, we can produce ethanol cheaper than you can buy a gallon of gasoline. So it helps the U.S. consumer, it helps the economy. You can take those dollars and spend them somewhere else instead of putting them in your fuel tank. And we won't get into is it cleaner for the environment, which we think it is, and we know it is. So for clean air and those, and it's good for here because we are buying a product that's grown in the United States, and we're selling that product to other people in the United States. So we're self-contained, and I think that's good for the American economy and for the U.S. To keep things here, in the United States.
The new Better Horses Network is worldwide, presented by Lucas Oil, featuring worldwide radio and TV with iconic hosts like Al Dunning, Sharon Camarillo, Ernie Rodina, Lindy Birch, and Craig Cameron. With American Cowboy, Horse and Rider, Brushy Creek, Cavenders, and Ride TV. Worldwide radio and TV, the all-new Better Horses Network.
As fourth-generation farmers themselves, Heinen Brothers Ag Service understands the risk and rewards of farming. So when it comes to quality aerial and ground application, fertilizer, ag chemicals, and anhydrous ammonia, call Heinen Brothers Ag today, 800-760-4964.
Earlier in my life, I rode bucking horses in rodeos, and my shoulders took such a beating, and that was probably the reason for having several previous surgeries on both shoulders. About a year ago, I decided that I didn't want to have another surgery. And so I contacted Kansas Regenerative Medicine, took their treatment process. It was relatively pain-free. Now, after 8 months, my shoulders have healed to the point where I think I'm probably 90 to 95% of normal. It takes a couple of months to start to see results and feel real progress. That continued to increase gradually until now at approximately 8 months. And I'm extremely pleased. I've got full range of motion. I can lift weights, I can throw, I can do a lot of things that I couldn't do without a lot of pain previously. So I'm tickled to death with the results, and I'd recommend this process to anyone.
This segment brought to you by Kansas Soybean Commission. Progress powered by Kansas farmers.
When beef is harvested, it's not typically delivered to a consumer's plate the same day. The holding process it goes through, called aging, serves an important purpose.
It improves the palatability, or how the beef is going to taste. And so when we look at palatability, there's really three main components, and it's tenderness, juiciness, and flavor. And so obviously a tenderness component of that is really paramount within there, with flavor following really closely behind. So as we look at if there's a way to improve that tenderness, it's going to improve the way that beef ultimately eats and consumer satisfaction therein.
There are two types. Wet aging, which means leaving the product in a bag to retain moisture, and dry aging, when it's exposed to a cooler's open air.
Really what that does is it concentrates that flavor. Meat's about 75% water, so it allows it to dry down a little bit. So think of a bottle of wine, making it into a wine reduction sauce. So we take the flavor that's in a full bottle and really reduce that down to where that flavor becomes much, much more intense in just a smaller format. Same concept within dry aging. Both achieve equal amounts of tenderness, but just different flavor profiles are developed throughout that process.
Most beef that's served at restaurants has been wet aged about 21 days. Dry aging is far less common, but it is a growing trend.
Vast majority of aging is done at food service, and again, it's vast majority of which is being wet. We're working with some retailers to try and again distinguish themselves from the other folks, and we look at food service as kind of the signal carrier, the flag carrier, if you will, in regards to where the industry goes. And so it's what we see taking place at food service. Typically a few years behind that would be retail.
It's all a balance. Beef marketers need to look at what their customers want, while also giving it to them at a price they'll pay. Dry aging does add to the ticket.
We're already taking a fairly expensive piece of meat and drying that down. Drying it down means a little bit less weight, which means the price goes up a little bit higher. And so it sometimes can be a little bit of a cost inhibitor there, but nonetheless, the end product is pretty special.
I'm Bob Cervera.
Closed captioning brought to you by Ag Promo Source. Together we grow. Learn more at agpromosource.com.